Good morning, church. What a beautiful worship time so far. And we continue to worship as we open the Word of God to Judges chapter 14. Aren't you thankful for the rain? Why don't you give the Lord praise for the rain? Come on. We complain when there is no rain, and then we complain when there is rain. Let's just give him praise. He is worthy. And your yard looks a lot better. And you're mowing more, I know. Happy Father's Day. What a great day. I'm going to ask all fathers, if you would, just to stand right now. Would you do that? Just stand with me. Would you give them thanks for all that they do, all they provide? God bless you all. Thank you. The first Father's Day, it is believed, took place in a place called Fairmont, West Virginia in 1908. Now, it was an unusual setting because it took place in a church, but it's the first time that really spurred a movement to acknowledge Father's Day in America. Mother's Day had already been acknowledged, but it's what led to this meeting that grabs our attention at this moment. You see, in that part of West Virginia, like the place my family comes from in Southwest Virginia, we were all coal miners. My grandfather, my mother's dad, was a coal miner. My great-grandfather, my father's grandfather, was a coal miner. The year before, 1908, 362 coal miners died in an explosion inside of a mine. And the church gathered on this day in 1908 to acknowledge their great loss, the great loss of fatherhood. We celebrate Father's Day and thank God for men who serve their family, their church, and their community. Do you know the difference between a male and a man? It's the difference between a donor and a father. I'm just his local rep, I'm telling you. Joby Martin, a pastor in Jacksonville, Florida, tells a story in my presence just about a month or two ago. He told the story of his 17-year-old son sitting at a stoplight in Jacksonville. Traffic was moving in front of him, right to left. Unbeknownst to him, a nurse on her way to work was passing through the intersection when someone drove straight by him and into her car, turned the car over, smoke's coming out of the engine compartment. This 17-year-old boy jumps out of his car, runs to open the door. He has to pry it open. He has to unbuckle the nurse. He gets her out and safely to the side. What he then notices is standing on the sidewalk around him are grown men with their cameras out recording it. And Joby Martin said that's the difference between a male and a 17-year-old man. There was only one man at that intersection today. It is a frightening moment when we see not men blown up in a coal mine, but men who recklessly live their lives for themselves. When God calls a man, he gifts a man to be more than a mere man. Jesus defines manhood for us in John 15:13. He says, "No one has a greater love than this, than one would lay down his life for his friends." Man, our greatest ability, and it's the reason you were applauded a moment ago, our greatest ability is our dependability. Who is it that counts on you? You see, every year the NFL calls football players from colleges and sometimes even high schools up to the pros. It's called the NFL draft. God has drafted men in his kingdom to serve, to provide, to protect, and to share the gospel. Samson was a man who could be counted on for 20 years of public ministry. Yet Samson's story is an enigma. One of my favorite speeches by Winston Churchill was in 1939. It was a speech where he references the Soviet Union, and he describes them this way. He said, "They are a riddle wrapped up in a mystery inside an enigma." That was Samson. He was strong yet weak. He was powerful yet vulnerable. He was faithful and he was unfaithful. But God drafted him. God didn't draft him for his ability. God didn't draft him because he was perfection of manhood. But he drafted him to defeat Israel's greatest enemy. And God drafted you. For every father in the room, for every man in the room, for every male hoping to be a man, put down the iPhone and engage. Involve your heart, your mind. Proverbs 5:15 in the Living Bible says, let your manhood be a blessing. So here's the sermon in a sentence this morning. When you give your vision and power to people rather than to God, you lose both. When you give your vision of life and your power from God to other people rather than to God, you lose both. And God has given every man and every woman in this room power and vision. Samson had two great gifts from God, vision and power. And we're going to look at these two, just these two. By the way, if you find a typo in the bulletin in my notes, I own it. I got hooked on phonics in the 3rd grade. I went through rehab, got over it, and my spelling has been shot ever since. So let's first of all look at vision. What is God's vision? I must be aging out because nobody laughs at the hooked on phonics thing. What is God's vision for your life? He created Samson for a purpose. He created you for a purpose. Look at Judges chapter 13, verse 1. It says, the Israelites again, that you will conceive and you will give birth to a son. Can I tell you something about infertility that I have noticed and have experienced? Is that God is always working his timing when we struggle to have children. It may be the timing for an adoption, it may be the timing down the road, and this is painful stuff. You can just enter into this woman's pain, this husband, Manoah's pain. But there's two things we get from this text. Number one, we see God's vision for Samson's life. It says Israel did what was evil in the sight of God. Look at verse 4. Now, please, she tells the angel of the Lord, which turns out to be another one of those amazing appearances of the Lord, and we see that. We don't have time to delve into it, but look at verse 4. This is what he says to her. Now, please be careful not to drink wine or beer. Clearly, she's Baptist. Watch this. Or eat anything unclean. Clearly, that's not Baptist. Verse 5, for indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son. You must never cut his hair. My grandson turned 10 last month. His hair has never been cut. He says he's strong. The knots in his hair are incredibly strong. Because this boy will be a Nazirite from God from birth, and he will begin to save Israel. Notice that. He'll begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. The Nazirite vow is mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy. It was a vow that you would make voluntarily. It was a vow that you would make that would abstain from the fruit of the vine, which means the grapes. I love grapes, I love raisins, and the wine that's produced from that. Second thing is you'd get no haircut. The third thing is you would have no contact with anything dead, human or animal or otherwise. By the way, every man and woman listening to me right now has a similar calling on your life. In Romans chapter 12, it says that this is our reasonable act of worship, that we give ourselves, so that we literally lay down our lives as a living sacrifice to the Lord. It doesn't mean that we die for the Lord per se, but it means that we daily make a decision about the things in life that matter. And it's the call of discipleship. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul says your life is not your own. It's been bought with a price. In Matthew 22, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. So God's call for Samson is the same call for every dad, every father, every man, and every male in this room, as well as every woman. Because God has drafted you. He's called you up to the leagues. He's called you up to play. Now here's the question. Do you see a vision for your life in that context? Do you think of your life in the context of being a follower, a disciple of Jesus Christ? How do you see your life? Or for so long, I would go to church on Sunday and I would not think any more about it throughout the whole week until I was back in church, whenever that was. William Blake, the poet, says, "This life's dim window of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you see with and not through your eye." Seeing with the eye is only seeing life as it appears to you on a daily basis. Seeing through the eye speaks of seeing something deeper in another person, deeper in the context of your life. The problem is Samson's vision from God was a great vision, but his personal vision was he only saw with his eyes. It was misaligned from God's vision. Is your vision God's vision for your life? Let me give you the theme of Judges. Again, Judges 17:6 captures it. It's repeated throughout the book. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did whatever seemed right to them, which I think is one of the classic illustrations of where our culture is today. It's moral relativism, yes, but it's more than that. Everybody does what they want to do and nothing more than what they want to do. God's vision is so much greater for fatherhood, so much greater for motherhood, so much greater for being a follower of Jesus Christ, that our lives are not our own. They've been bought with a high price. So we see God's vision for Samson's life, but now let's look at Samson's vision for his life. Look at chapter 14, verse 1. Samson went down to Timnah and saw, stop. This word saw is here. Now you're going to see the word saw or see several times in this passage. But it tells us that he's not seeing through his eyes, he's seeing with his eyes. It says, now Samson went down to Timnah. Timnah is a city in the area called Sorek in Israel, which is near Gaza. He went down to Timnah and he saw a young Philistine woman there. He went back to and told his father and mother, I have seen, there's the word again, a young Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as a wife. But the father and his mother said to him, can't you find a young woman amongst your relatives, amongst any of your own people? Don't you expect this conversation to happen? Must you go down to these uncircumcised Philistines for a wife? But Samson told his father, get her for me. Look at this. She's the right one for me. Literally in the Hebrew, she looks good to me. Samson was a he-man with a she problem. And Samson saw a woman, and Samson at that moment is not thinking about God. Let me ask you, how many times this week, through what you saw with your eyes, did you immediately make an equation to God? And what would God have me do in these circumstances? C.S. Lewis, talking about lust, simply said, lust is forgetfulness of God. It really is. Since our deepest desire is for God, lust is a diversion from that desire. It's forgetting God, that God has a plan, that God has drafted me, that God has called me up, that He has the right of a creator to determine my life, my location, my destiny, my doing, my worship. It's not just Samson that's reckless. He's a picture of all of Israel that had grown reckless in this hour. Now, what's really interesting in the book of Judges at this point, I'm not just nerding out here, but it's really important to understand that in all the times there's this pattern of the people would fall into sin, God would allow a kingdom to come in and take them over, and the people would then cry out to God for deliverance. He would raise up a judge who would deliver them. For 40 years, things would be good until the cycle continued again. This is the only time in the book of Judges that they don't cry out. And yet God delivers them. Now, this is really important. It could speak as to why this story is so unique in the book of Judges. Samson's vision for his life was all about himself. But in Israel, it was the same thing. Israel had had all their weapons stolen from the Philistines. They couldn't fight. They couldn't put an army together. They couldn't defend themselves or protect their families. In Judges 15:11, it says, 3,000 men of Judah came to the rock of Etam, and they asked Samson, do you realize that the Philistines rule us? What have you done for us? There's a story here. So he goes to this woman in Timnah. They throw a big wedding party. He loves riddles. On his way there, he kills a lion with his bare hands. I don't know about you, but that's strong. And then a week later he comes by and bees have made a nest inside of this lion. He touches the lion, which he's not supposed to do as a Nazirite. He grabs the honey and he eats it. Bees all over the place. I mean, it's an amazing picture. So when he gets to this place, there's all kinds of wedding customs in different cultures, and the wedding custom was that he's gonna have to pay for some things, but he puts it on the line like this. He said, if you can answer this riddle, then I get all of your possessions. If you answer the riddle, if you don't answer the riddle, I get it. If you do answer, then I'll give it to you. And so here's the point. They couldn't. It was about the lion, it was about the honey, what is sweet. And they didn't know what to do except to go to the girl that he's about to marry. And they said to him, we will pay you money if you will convince him or tell us what the answer is to the riddle. And she does. And it throws him into a tizzy. He gets hundreds of foxes. Now, I don't know who has the time to go capture hundreds of foxes. He ties their tails together and puts a torch in between them. How did he hold that torch steady? He sets them free. They burn up all the town. They burn up all their crops. And the people then come and kill the girl and her husband, or her father. It's an amazing story, and I didn't have time to read it in the text, but just to simply say, Israel was upset because this deliverer is delivering them, even if his motives are not good, his vision is not good. It's important to understand it reveals who they are. Let me ask you something. Do you really want God to move in America again? I think it's a very important question to answer because it may cost us something. It may cost us a pleasure we enjoy. It may cost us money we have earned and kept and saved. You see, we love the things of this world. Francis Schaeffer made a profound impact on my life as a young college student. He said that the Western world, and he was speaking of the United States in particular, have two primary values: personal peace and affluence. Now I'm quoting him. A life of minimal possibilities for being personally disturbed. My personal life undisturbed is my lifetime. In my lifetime, he was talking about the goal of the American. Regardless of what the result of my lifetime would be for my children or my grandchildren, affluence means an overwhelming, ever-increasing prosperity, a life made up of things, and more things. A success judged by an ever-increasing higher level of material abundance. So he said, what's important to us in the West today, and even in the church, is personal peace. Don't disturb me. I work hard. I don't want to be bothered. And personal affluence. The Philistines did not see the average Israelite as a threat. Now, this is really important because they had already disarmed them. Does Satan see this church as a threat? Samson picks a fight with the Philistines. Israel said, don't rock the boat. So what is your vision of your time, of your day, of your life, of your family, of your church, of your community? For 20 years, Samson lived faithful. Then all of the sudden, he started looking with his eye and not through it. He started living for his sensuality and not the care of others. Maybe it was depression. Maybe it was discouragement. Maybe he was tired of working with people as stubborn as his Israelite brethren were. Sensuality lies dormant in all of us, but it never dies. And don't assume that past success or performance guarantees future victory. So what do we learn from Samson? If you're a mom and dad who had great expectations of a child, but they're not living that, they're living a sensual existence today, sensual people can be born from godly people. They only see the external. God wants us to look like he does at the heart. That's why Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 3, don't let your outward adornment be all there is about you. Your hair, your clothing, how you look. Let the inner self, the unfading beauty of character be what dominates your heart. This is all about vision. What do you look for? What do you see? Secondly, is power. In Greek mythology, Achilles was a handsome, valiant warrior. Thetis was an ocean god, a sea god, who mythology says grabbed Achilles by the heel and dipped him into the river Styx, completely baptized him and immersed him. Everything about Achilles was covered in the water of the river Styx except his heel, which became his weakness. So what is your Achilles heel? Oscar Wilde, the poet and playwright, said, "I can resist anything except temptation." So what is Samson's weakness? Judges 16 now, verse 4 says, sometime later he fell in love with a woman named Delilah who lived in the Sorek Valley. Sorek is a region of Israel where the volcanic soil is such that it produces amazing, beautiful, sweet red grapes. I think I have a picture up that I took in the Sorek Valley. Her name was Delilah. In Hebrew, it literally means weakness, which is ironic because she overpowered him. Verse 5 says, the Philistine leaders went to her and said, persuade him, interesting word, and to tell you where his strength comes from so we can overpower him and tie him up and make him helpless. Each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. We want you to persuade him. Literally, the Hebrew word means entice him. In other words, find out what his weaknesses are. He's big, he's strong. He tore the gates off of one of our cities. He crushes people. He killed thousands of Philistine soldiers with the jawbone of a donkey. This man is amazing. He has amazing power. James warns us in James 1:14, let each person, when each person is tempted, when he is drawn away, and there's that word, enticed by his own evil desires. The Greek word, which the New Testament's written in, is the word to bait something, to bait a hook, to lure something and then set the hook. Proverbs 7:21 tells us a story of a young man who's foolish and a very sophisticated woman who is seducing him. And I'll just read a couple of verses toward the end. It says, with persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. And at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierced his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing that it will cost him his life. Guys, when you hunt, when you practice your bowmanship, when you sight in your rifle, when you get ready and you set the thing up and you put out the corn, if it's legal now, I don't know. Even if it's not, I'm just warning you. In daytime hunting, I hope. But when that deer comes in, he has no idea you're there until you pull the trigger. What is your Achilles heel? That could be sex, it could be greed. It could be something that kills the pain. It could be worry, it could be anger. You need to know what your weakness is and you need to know what your strength is. Samson's weakness. Look at Samson's downfall. Samson loved to play riddles and games with people, mind games. I think Samson thought he was the smartest guy in the room. He knew he was the strongest guy in the room. But there's a real danger when you think you're the smartest guy in the room. Samson tells these stories in verse 7 and verse 11 and verse 13. He plays with Delilah. She goes, oh, Samson, sweet Samson, pooky lips, pumpkin face. What makes you so strong? I mean, I love how strong you are. So he spins a story, a yarn, if you will. Just so happens that night she does exactly what he says. And when he jumps in, they come in to kill him, he jumps up and he conquers the Philistines. Samson, the Philistines are upon you. This repeats. But what's interesting in this repetition is that he gets closer and closer and closer to the reality. In Judges 6:16, it says that she nagged him day and night and pleaded with him and wore him out. It'd been a lot easier if you had married a good Jewish girl, I'm just telling you. By the way, do not make the mistake so many people do. Samson's power was not his hair. His hair was a symbol of his power. His power was God and God's presence. The symbol was all about his dedication or lack thereof at this moment of weakness. His power was surrender to the Lord. Samson did not understand his weakness or his power. Do you? Look at verse 19 of Judges 16. Then she let him fall asleep on her lap, because he finally told her, it's my hair. He fell asleep on her lap. Had a man come in and shave the 7 braids of hair, she had braided his hair. In this way, the scripture says, she made him helpless and his strength left him. Then she cried, Samson, the Philistines are here. And when he awoke from his sleep, he said, I will escape as I did before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Samson had long since stopped depending upon God. He relied on his own wit, his own wisdom. He wasn't relying on God's strength. But here's the thing. Whether it's a man like Samson, a nation like Israel, or a church like ours, is it possible that we would not know that the Lord had left us? Not abandoned us, but that his power and his favor, his joy. We sang about the joy of the Lord a while ago. Do you want the joy of the Lord? Because it was the joy set before him that he endured the cross. His joy is a durable joy. His joy is not about the moment of what you're suffering. His joy is always about the fruit of what God will do through your suffering. His joy is much greater than anything you can imagine. Do you really want that? Because it does explain why we go through difficulties. Would you know if the Lord departed or not? The tragedy of this story is when they came upon him, they gouged out his eyes. So 2 things God blessed him with, vision and power. Now both are gone. But that's not the end of the story, thank God. Look at verse 22. Now he's in prison. He's in a Philistine prison. They are mocking him endlessly. They're singing songs about him in the streets. Verse 22 says, but his hair began to grow back after it had been shaved. This is a symbol. Verse 23 says, now the Philistine leaders gathered together to offer a great sacrifice of their god Dagon. You see, in that culture, in that world, what they would do is if they beat Samson, that proves that Dagon is greater than Yahweh. And so now they're gloating that their religion is greater. They rejoiced and said, our God has handed over our enemy Samson to us. 3,000 Philistines show up for this party, this worship event, and they are worshiping a false god, and they bring this kid with a chain, snagging Samson, dragging him out, stumbling in front of the crowd. They chain him to 2 pillars. People are lined up. Theologians and scholars tell us that doubtless thousands of people were lined up in the upper chambers looking down. The kings, the princes, and all of the legislators and generals and officials were on the bottom part. They brought him out as amusement. They ordered him to dance like a monkey. He is their trophy to the god Dagon. Verse 29. Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars supporting the temple, and he leaned against them, one in his right hand and one in his left. And Samson said, Lord, let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed with all of his might, and the temple fell on the leaders and all the people in it. And those he killed in his death were more than he had killed in his entire life. You see, God has drafted you and I for a purpose. He's drafted you and I for his service. It may be the humble service of being a faithful husband and father. It may be the humble service of teaching a small group. It may be the humble service of going to the ends of the earth on mission. It may be the humble service of helping plant a church someplace. Whatever that humble service is, faithfully sharing the gospel where you work and faithfully loving people and serving people in this community in the name of Christ. He has drafted you to that. And he wants you not just to have 20 years of success, he wants your whole life. What we see in this last part of the story is sad, but it is powerful because it is a picture of Christ. You see, the real hero is not Samson. The real hero is not my dad. It's not me. It's Jesus. The bracing of the two pillars reminds us of Jesus' arms stretched wide at the cross. The greatest moment and the greatest impact was the moment Samson is there, and it's when Jesus was hanging on the cross. The one thing we never wanted to see happen as his disciples, turns out, was the greatest event in human history, both in its horror and great in its final product, the salvation of many. Samson died due to disobedience. Christ's death is because of obedience. Samson died to crush the Philistines. Jesus died to crush Satan's head. In both cases, these are acts of self-denial. It began deliverance for all of us. Both appeared to be defeated by their enemy. And Samson brought the house down. Jesus emptied the tomb, crushing the house of our enemy, Satan. Samson's dying words was, "Remember me, Lord. Remember me." There was a thief on the cross hanging next to Jesus who cried out, "Lord, remember me." Let me ask you something. Will you ask God right now to remember you? Because if you ask him, he will. Paul David Tripp said something I want to say to you, I want to repeat to you. He said, success in life and ministry isn't God's endorsement of your character, but rather a revelation of his. He didn't save you because you're cute. He didn't save you because you have value. He didn't save you because you offer him something or he uses you as a trophy. No. He saved you because he loves you. And he knows what it's like to be lost, and he wants you to be saved. He knows what it's like to be separated from God, and he wants you never to be separated from God. And so he gave his life for you. But he also knows what it's like to be rejected. Maybe you've stumbled badly. Maybe you have fallen in disgrace. There is a God who remembers you. When you humbly cry out and say, "God, would you save me?" He will hear you. "God, I have failed. Can you still use me? Can you still love me?" And his answer is yes. You see, grace is your power, and grace is your vision. So how is your vision today? Are you seeing things with your eyes or through your eyes? What do you want? What is it that drives you? God wants to be what drives you. There came a point in my life where I had to surrender that drive, that passion. I wanted my life to be certain things. I had to surrender it and say, "Lord, I think you know better than I do what you made me to do." Have you ever done that? It was a crisis in my life and was on a dark road one night. And I remember saying to the Lord, "Lord, whatever your plan is, it's got to be better than mine." Because my world had just come crushing down. So what is your vision and what is your power? What is your strength? Is it God or is it in you? Father, in the name of Jesus, we have come to you. And it is appropriate that we should sing now, "Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe." And as we prepare to worship in response to your word, would you also do something else in our hearts? Lord, would you let those that you are dealing with right now, speaking to, pressing in on, convicting, encouraging, Lord, would you give them the strength to just get up right now and make their way to this altar to pray to you, not to me, not to anybody else, not to be seen. But physical action is often necessary when we have been convicted of something that's either true, right, or not right that needs to be changed. So Lord, help us respond to you. Help us to humble ourselves and kneel Help us to ask for forgiveness and restoration. Help us, dear Lord, to be the men, the fathers, the mothers, the daughters you have called us to be. And may we glorify you. And Lord, may you never have to leave this place because of our stubbornness and our selfish rebellion. Would you stand together?